And this is just a blow up of the downtown TIFs. I'll skip that. This is a handout I give you that shows this percentage. This is by state law. We can't go over 12% of our total equalized of all our TIFs. So I'll give you that handout. We're well within that, as Wayne said. This is the exact same number that Wayne gave you. We're at 3.17 billion. City equalized value. We can't exceed 12% of that number in all our TIFs. So I'll give you that. Just a quick calculation, even though this doesn't include TIFs 1 or 3, but TIFs generated over $250 million worth of tax base for the city of La Crosse. That 195 is just what, pardon me?
1 and 3 are not included because?
They're retired. They're retired. And actually TIF 2 and TIF 3 are the same. They're the Valley View Mall. And apparently when TIF 2 was created, there was something wrong with didn't follow exactly the procedure. So they had to get rid of TIF 2. They created TIF 3. So we really have TIF 14. We had TIF 1 and 3. They're retired, so they're not shown in that increase, if you will. Just some major projects downtown that the La Crosse River Recreational Trail. We buried some overhead wires in the Heschler-Robers area right up the door here. We bought Frank Liquor, the La Crosse Center expansion, streetscaping. We did a Main Street Mall and Sculpture Garden, the Riverwalk, Cass Street Bridge, Pettibone Park improvements, other streetscaping. So that's what TIF, yes, there's been some developer incentives, but the goal of TIF is, the Riverwalk, community benefit as well. This one had some controversy at the time, creating a TIF for Gunderson Lutheran. It was to help finance a 1,000-stall ramp, development of the Gun Brewery line, additional hopeful development of hotels, restaurants. We helped Gunderson with 3 Habitat for Humanity homes. This was really an attempt at using TIF, not just for downtown revitalization or industrial, but try to improve a neighborhood using TIF. So again, I think that's it. Again, this is a great source if you have detailed, if you want to go look at all the TIFs in Wisconsin, which I printed out here today. Just for a comparative, some people say we have too many TIFs. I just went through this. Some cities of, Oshkosh has 17. We've got 10. Janesville has 16. Racine has 13. Manitowoc, smaller than La Crosse, has 11. Kenosha has 9. Menasha, smaller than all of those cities, has 11. Medford, pretty tiny community, has 8 TIF districts. Berlin, which I don't even know, I asked Randy Turtenwald where Berlin, Wisconsin, I don't even know where it is. They have 7 TIFs. It's not New Berlin, it's Berlin. They have 7 TIFs. So,
by Green Lake.
North of Green Lake.
Okay.
Where's Green Lake?
What's the population? So again, a compilation right off that website of every TIF in Wisconsin, above that 12% or not, what their equalized value is, what the base was, et cetera, for every TIF. So I think that's it. Questions? I'm going to do these handouts too.
Okay,
What I have here are the top 10 TIF questions. So I have 25. I think that might cover it. The top 10 TIF questions. And then I have that table for you. Hand that out. Should we do the same thing? And well, I'll just follow that up with this then.
Larry, while you're handing that out, I've got 2 questions if I could. Like you got something. Okay. One is, when we amend a TIF boundary, does the time then extend on the time that we boundary?
No.
So in other words, when we create the TIF, and if it's a 27-year TIF, it's going to be ended in that 27. It has to be ended in that 27 years.
Correct.
No matter how many amendments we make to it or changes to the boundary or anything.
That's correct.
Including the additional boundary.
That's all within, that's an amendment to the
Okay.
TIF boundary that stays within that time frame. That's
Okay,
correct.
all right, thank you. Now, the percent of TIF, the percent of the equalized value that we're allowed to have in TIF is limited to 12%.
Correct.
Okay? As we pay down TIFs, that number goes down, correct?
As you close out a TIF, yes.
So in other words,
That number would go down, and in theory, though, this number goes up. That 3.127 billion, that hopefully goes up. Our tax base goes up.
okay.
More TIF capacity. If you retire a TIF, you're creating more TIF capacity.
Okay, but what I guess is, but prior to the TIFs being closed out, does that, if we don't add any more TIFs, and the revenue, the TIFs are being paid down, that 6.24%, that number is going to continue to go down as long as we don't create more TIFs.
The number goes down only because the equalized value goes up. And
Right.
we do this calculation once a year when we get the total equalized value plus the value of all the TIFs from the Department of Revenue.
Okay, so is the TIF portion that's not paid down or paid off or closed, is that part of the equalized value then?
You're talking about the expenditures?
What I'm trying to find out is let's say we created enough TIFs or enough TIF money and we 12%. We started there, let's say in 2009, we are at 12%. We can't do any more TIFs, period, because the state won't allow us. If we did, as the TIF is being paid down, that 12% is going to go down right along with it. Is that correct?
No.
Okay, all right. You answered my question. Thank you.
The paying down of the TIF is the debt. The debt
Got to be
service.
closed out.
You got to be close. You got the TIF, and then that number changes. Again,
Okay.
that number changes every year because our equalized value changes, and the equalized value of all our TIFs change. And I have this list. There's some cities that are at 15%. There really isn't a policing of this 12%. It's really kind of a self-policing deal. But what happened was a lot of cities, there was a two-tailed test. You could either be 5% of your total equalized value or 7%. There were a lot of cities that were way over the 7%. State legislature says, well, let's just make it 12%. Everybody can meet that. Well, I was looking at this list last night. There's a city that's over 15% already. Yeah, Mike.
I know a few years ago you wanted the potential developers to provide them some type of financial information to see if they are worthy of paying the bills. And I think what precipitated that was Market Square and Dorfliners, and the financial information is going to remain confidential. Are you getting any financial information from prospective tips that are helping private developers?
And I want to point this out here on that top 10 TIF question. On the second page of that, it says internal questions to ask before using TIF. This is from the Department of Revenue. If you look at question 8, does the developer get public subsidy? That's the fundamental question we should be asking as public servants, public officials. And we at the Planning Department have advocated that our policy be a need-based TIF policy. I'd like to see more riverwalks, if you will, as opposed to direct developer subsidies. That's my philosophy anyway. If you can answer number 8, then I think number 10 is answered. What are the political risks associated with TIF? If everybody's doing their homework here, there shouldn't be any political risk to a TIF. Our goal is community revitalization. TIF has been viewed negatively, but if we want the community, this is really the only economic development tool we have, so we shouldn't abuse it, and we should be responsible in handing out government money, because it's not our money, it's the taxpayers' money. So I think if we can answer number 8, then all those other questions, because this gets back to that but-for clause. But for the TIF, would this development happen? But for some incentive, would the private sector be able to handle this? Again, I don't think the city should be funding development that should happen on its own. So does that answer your question?
Do you look at the financial penalty?
Yes, we do. Do we do as good as we could? Probably not. I'd like to see us get better to make sure it's a need-based. For TIF, we should really be filling the gap. What is the gap that the public sector has to fill in order to make sure the revitalization occurs?
Council needs, follow up on what you're saying, the council needs to get that legislation out that's going to let you exactly work with making TIFs. It's got to be clear so that anyone else coming to the city that wants a TIF is going to understand these are the limits.
There's a reluctancy, to get back to your point and Mike's point, is that, and we've tried to work around this, that their private financial information can go to the city attorney's office. We even propose that it stay at their accountant's office so it doesn't become a public record. We get to review it, we get to know what their financial situation is. But most of them, there's trade secrets perhaps, they don't want that public information disclosed. So we've tried to create a way to give everybody confidence from both sides that we're reviewing financial information.